Is your childhood creating chaos in your life today? Men who are emotionally neglected as boys struggle to manage their emotions. And in the last 6 years of processing childhood trauma and coaching people for hundreds of hours, I discovered that childhood neglect holds men back in every area of life. In this video, I want to share what it is, the subtle ways it shows up in men specifically, and a 30-second habit that helped me heal. And if you'd like to understand the full impact of your past on your present, I've created this free AI tool that helps you understand how traumatic your childhood was on a scale of 0 to 100. But more on it later. Let's understand what emotional neglect really is. As a child, you're dependent on your parents for your physical needs. So you're hungry, you cry, you get fed. You shit yourself, you cry, someone comes and cleans you up. If these physical needs are not met, you die. Similarly, as a child, you are also dependent on your parents, your caregivers, for your emotional needs. And when these needs are violated, you suffer. You may not die physically, but you die psychologically. And that's not an exaggeration. As a child, these are your emotional needs. Being physically held and comforted when you're upset, getting asked about your feelings, and supporting your emotional expression, especially the negative ones like fear, anger, guilt, shame, sadness, hurt, etc. Psychology and child development research considers this violation of your emotional needs as trauma. Now take a pause here and reflect as to what extents were these emotional needs met or violated in your childhood. Most people, myself included, make the stupid mistake of considering this type of trauma, basically discounting this type of trauma. But leading experts throughout the world agree that it can be equally as damaging as other major forms of trauma, like let's say sexual abuse, because it spans across your childhood and it layers, like it just keeps layering and compounding. Which brings me to how emotional neglect impacts men. The first sign is something that I call emotional illiteracy. If I were to ask you right now, how does sorrow or excitement feel in your body? Would you be able to give me an answer? Men are infamous for how bad they are with their emotions, especially in relationships. The clinical term for this is alexithymia, which is the inability to feel, to recognize, and express your emotions using words. So every time you cried as a child and you were told to not cry as a girl because you're a boy, the message you got was that you're not supposed to feel a certain set of emotions as a man. Emotions like fear, you're not supposed to be scared, emotions like sorrow, whatever. And slowly you start losing touch with a certain set of your emotions. By the way, this is also where the cancer of toxic masculinity emerges from. And emotions are like a pendulum. If you push down the negative or unpleasant ones, the pleasant ones get suppressed as well. If you take a short inhale, your exhale would be short as well. The second sign is feeling like a stranger to yourself. Do you ever feel like you don't really know who you are? I felt like this for the longest of time. In fact, I still do. If someone were to come to me and tell me, Fasi, just be yourself, I would just be blank. I remember one time I was a child, I was sad, and I told an adult that no one really loves me. And they told me in the sweetest of tone that don't feel this. And even though they were trying to console me and comfort me, the message I got because of that don't feel this was probably something like this emotion is not appreciated. And with enough repetition of such messages, you start losing touch with your emotions and in turn your personality, because your emotions are so core to who you are. And you end up becoming this hollow husk of a person, this hollow personality who is just a combination of stolen traits from people you look up to. And this sounds harsh, but I'm literally talking about myself. The third sign is toxic shame. And toxic shame is not an emotion, but this deep underlying sense of I am worthless, not enough, insufficient, broken, bad, unworthy. Let's say you were angry as a child and you were throwing a tantrum, and because of that, you get yelled at by your father, or even worse, you were left alone, which is often what happens when children express a certain set of negative emotions. And because emotions are so core to who you are as a person, the only way your child brain could interpret that is me at my core, my authentic self with my true emotions is worthless. And I am convinced after a lot of research and personal experience that toxic shame affects 100% of people with childhood trauma. In fact, the more childhood trauma a person carries, the more toxic shame they carry as well. They're uh, directly proportional. The fourth sign is eternal loneliness. Do you ever feel like no one truly understands you? If you weren't accepted, appreciated as your whole self at your core with your entire set of emotions, more likely than not, this sense of being isolated, being alone, and being not understood carries forward in your adult life when you become a man. And I don't just mean physical loneliness. There have been times when I was surrounded by people, I looked like I was having a fun time, but deep down inside, I felt super alone. The fifth sign is people pleasing, but not the usual kind. Do you feel like you try the most to sustain a relationship, no matter what type of a relationship it is? And along with that, there's this deeper underlying fear that if you stop trying, the relationship would come to an end. Because of the deep loneliness we just talked about, we desperately crave any form of love, for which we sometimes go too far in the form of people pleasing. I heard this from a therapist that people pleasing is just a form of manipulation. And I agree with it 100%. You are nice to someone, you please someone else in the hope that they please you back. It's out of desperation. Whereas genuine niceness is out of generosity. Before we move on to the exact concrete steps to heal this, if you're anything like me, you're probably wondering what exactly happened in my childhood which caused these signs to show up in me. We often don't realize the lifelong impact of tiny, seemingly insignificant things that happen in our childhood, which is exactly why I've created this tool that tells you how traumatic your childhood was. You just answer some questions and it gives you a score from 0 to 100, and a lot of things start to make sense because of how the questions are framed. Unexpectedly, this is what my score was. So if this is something that you'd be interested in, click the link below and I'll send it to you for free. Here are tiny steps you can start taking today to heal. Because emotional neglect causes this disconnect within yourself and with your emotions, the obvious solution here is to find ways to rebuild that connection with your own emotions. In fact, the German word for healing, the originating word of healing, is the word heilen, which means to become whole. And you must start becoming whole at the levels of your mind, body, and relationships. How do you do that? The easiest thing you can start doing today is downloading this free app called How We Feel. Let me walk you through it. So it's this beautiful app that I love so much, and it allows you to figure out what you're feeling using specific words. So as soon as you open, it'll ask you how are you feeling, and there are 4 categories: high energy pleasant, high energy unpleasant, low energy unpleasant, and low energy pleasant. Also notice how they're not calling it negative and positive, but rather unpleasant and pleasant. So let's say currently I'm feeling low energy pleasant. I am tired but enjoying this. And just because I want to expedite this, let's say I'm feeling satisfied, it might not be the most accurate. But so as soon as you enter the emotion, there's a place to journal and introspect as well as to why you might be feeling that emotion. So currently I'm recording, so that's what I'll type. And then this is my personal favorite feature in this app. there's a place to interocept as well, which is your ability to recognize your feelings and sensations in the body. So currently I am feeling a little tingly in my feet. That's what I'll lodge in. And it's done. I've recommended this app to several of my clients and friends, and without fail, everyone fucking loves this. You can lodge in your emotions multiple times a day. I personally do it at least 3 times. I try for 3 times. I've put on this home screen widget that just stares me in my face, asking me how I'm feeling every time I open up my phone. But you can also put in enable notifications in the app so that it reminds you. So if you just do this 30-second check-in every single day for the next 6 months, your emotional intelligence will go through the roof. And if you're thinking 6 months is too much, that is exactly the kind of mentality or mindset that hinders inner work and getting better with your emotions. Think about it. It took years for that damage to accumulate in your childhood. It only makes sense that it takes time for you to undo that damage. So if you're serious about inner work, be prepared for it being a long-term journey. Another thing you can start doing if you want to take it to the next level is, as you start developing the emotional vocabulary, start expressing them in your relationships. The damage incurred in context of relationships, and it heals the best in the same context. And it does feel vulnerable if you've never done it before, been there, done that, but that's just you going out of your comfort zone, which is where the growth lies. But start with close and people you feel safe with, and then you can gradually extend it to even strangers as you start developing your courage muscle. And of course, things like therapy and trauma-informed coaching help a lot if you can afford it. And if you'd like to work with me, I'd love to walk with you on this journey. Click the link below and schedule a free call with me. And if this was relatable, I encourage you to share your experience and your struggles down in the comments. It helps you and other people who read your experience feel validated. So it really helps everyone. Something else that is also super effective for processing your emotions is journaling. I talk about the 9 ways it changed my life in this video. So click here if you'd like to explore that next.